Good evening, everyone. You're in the right place at the right time. This is Coast to Coast AM, blasting out of the Mojave Desert like a Scirocco, blazing across the land, slamming into your radio like a supercharged nanoparticle of unobtainium. Greetings from the boldest, bawdiest, most outrageous city in the world, the planetary capital of sun, fun, sin, sex, and secrets. My not-so-humble hometown, Las Vegas, Nevada. My name is George Knapp, your occasional host, designated driver of the airwaves, and moderator of tonight's upcoming cacophonous cavalcade of conversation. Tonight we journey back in time, at least back in time for me, to the point where I started down this weird road. The subject, Area 51, Groom Lake, Dreamland, The Box, Paradise Ranch. Probably a lot of other names we aren't allowed to know. You know, it's kind of a contradiction in terms, in a sense, the world's best-known secret base. I'm using air quotes around secret. It is a top-secret facility that has played a crucial role in the protection of our national security, but which has been so secretive, so over-the-top in hiding what goes on out there that it has spawned all kinds of wild stories. It's the base that didn't exist, at least for a lot of years. It was there, and then poof, it's gone, like Brigadoon, like the stealth aircraft it spawned. For those of you who do not live in caves or under rocks, Area 51 is back on the front burner these days. The base that didn't exist has found a whole new audience and is once again at the forefront of UFO arguments and discussions. You know, I mentioned a couple of times on the program in the last month or so, and in several stories that we've written and aired for KLAS TV, the Storm Area 51 movement. That's what you like to call it. As I've expressed before, you know, the first rule of Storm Area 51 is don't storm Area 51. Don't do it. Don't try to cross the line out there, not even if there are 1 million people, which is, you know, pretty unlikely number, by the way. We'll get into that a little bit later. But is there something less drastic that might help move the ball down the field, make a difference, push for transparency, while at the same time being perish the thought, fun as well? Well, maybe so. Tonight we'll look at how this happened, what provided the current spark, the historical context that provided the fuel for the fire that's burning now, and what might happen less than a month from now out in the Nevada desert. We have multiple angles to cover because this is not a simple matter and not a simple plan. It's tricky and maybe risky, primarily because no one can say for sure what is about to happen or how many people are going to show up. It's hard to even get a good guess. So tonight, we'll take a deep dive into this subject. We will hear from the young man whose Facebook page launched 1 million memes, jokes, cartoons, videos, serious news articles. And what's the view of locals about the main events planned for September 20th and 21st? A longtime Nevada businessman and political strategist, George Harris, will join us to tell about his plans for his portion of this event. He calls it Storm Area 51 BASECAMP and has a robust 2-day event planned. Then filmmaker Jeremy Corbell will join us to talk about his role in helping to shape the narrative that's unfolding as we speak, how a much broader audience might be able to help even if they can't make it to the event themselves and in person. So yes, we got a lot of ground to cover. Tonight we go exploring into the deep, dark secrets of Area 51, how to shine some light on secrets that perhaps don't need to be kept. A few months ago, a Facebook page appeared kind of out of the blue, and it caught fire. Page was created by a young man named Matty Roberts, who lives in Bakersfield, California. He'd just seen an interview that involved a man named Bob Lazar talking about a secret facility in the Nevada desert, south of a base known as Area 51. The interview was by podcaster Joe Rogan, and it included filmmaker Jeremy Corbell discussing his film about Lazar and the whole Area 51 lore that's grown over the past 30 years. And it's a story that's been around a long time. I know that. You know that. But it's taken on a new life, and Matty saw this interview with Rogan and Lazar and Corbell and had an idea, a joke, really. Hey, why don't we all storm Area 51? You know, they can't stop all of us. Let's see them aliens. That's kind of how it went. Funny stuff, but somehow it struck a nerve. It exploded. And within a matter of days, millions of people not only saw this page, but said they planned to participate in an event out there. September 20th, Storm Area 51 was born. Here's a clip from an interview Matty did when he first went public and revealed his identity, talking about why he was inspired to do something.
I'm just a dude from Bakersfield. I had a meme page that had maybe 62 likes on it. Area 51 was already in the back of my mind after watching the Joe Rogan podcast with you and Bob Lazar. And then I had watched your film, Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers. And then it clicked. I was like, man, I have an idea for the page. Real reason I made this was as a joke. And it just completely took off after like 3 days. There's a need for knowledge. I feel like there's a lot of knowledge that's being withheld. And I think that's why the event really took off. The people have really made this into what it is. It struck a nerve with everybody. It's the pinnacle of the meme.
So it started as a joke. He's not serious about storming Area 51. Most people got that, but some didn't. And soon enough, the Facebook page kind of took on a life of its own. It's inspired other jokes and videos and cartoons and celebrity endorsements, as well as serious news stories about whether or not this is real. What started it? The story of Bob Lazar told all over again, articles about the legacy of Area 51. Not long afterward, Matty came forward and revealed his name, and then he was visited by a couple of FBI agents. And the word went out loud and clear that storming Area 51 is a bad idea, bad on many levels, so please don't do it. It would accomplish nothing, but the seed has been planted, so several ideas have been born, proposals for major events out there in the desert, in Lincoln County and Nye County, a couple here in Clark County, pitches for events and gatherings of one kind or another with different names. And most of those have died or fallen by the wayside, but others are moving forward. They're still forming. George Harris is primarily known as a businessman, an entrepreneur here in Las Vegas, but has a lifelong interest in aliens and ETs and government secrecy. He refers to himself as a ufologist. He created a business around all his interests. It's called Alien Tequila. The bottles, if you've ever seen them, are shaped like an ET's head. He also founded the Alien Research Center, which is built right at the start of the ET Highway. That's the road that leads to Area 51. His property will host one of the events that's planned for September 20th, 21st. George, it's great to have you on the program.
George, thank you so much for inviting me. It's going to be nice to give people information that they can use and understand, and really hopefully understand that we want them to be safe first before anything.
If people have ever driven on the ET Highway, right at the beginning of the highway, there's a turnoff to a place called Hyco, which is a tiny little community. I don't know if there's 100 people out there. And there's this silver building, a curved building, and a 50-foot tall alien robot that looks kind of like Gort from the day the Earth stood still. So when was that built, and what inspired you to take that leap? Because there's not a whole lot out there in Lincoln County.
Well, there's nothing out there, but when I decided that I was going to be serious about this for the rest of my life and provide an area where people can come and do their own research, we have a tiny little museum and a gift shop. It's a pretty large gift shop, and it helps pay a lot of these bills for my hobby, because this is a hobby.
How is it doing now? Since this Facebook page and the Storm Area 51 idea popped up, how long did it take for you to notice?
I can tell you that everybody wants to give full credit to this meme, but honestly, George, our business started increasing when Jeremy Corbell came out with the documentary on Bob Lazar.
We'll get into that. Sticking with after this Facebook page takes off, how quickly did it come to your attention, and what was your first thought when you heard it? Area 51?
It was pretty much immediately. People would call and they'd ask, and then you started hearing chatter that there's going to be 5,000 people show up out here on the 20th, and then it went from 5,000 to 10,000, and now the latest number, that's consistent number that you've heard over the last month and a half, is 30,000 people. And are they going to come? I think that you're going to be amazed, and that number is going to come on the 21st and 22nd of September. We started talking to the sheriff. I said, look, these people are coming anyways. Let's try to put something together that's going to be safe and well thought out, so you can manage people and move them from point A and point B. Because I do think if 30,000 people showed up at one time, this is rural area Nevada. there's no services, there's nothing, it would be a problem. So we decided to take that, and we created Storm Area 51 Base Camp Experience, which is a 2-day event taking place at the Alien Research Center.
Let's talk for a moment about the challenges of putting on a large event out in Lincoln County. It's one of my favorite places in the world. It's a beautiful area, rural, but there are limited services. It's sparsely populated. So when you're talking about, 2 million people sign up and say they're coming, which of course no one believed it would ever get that big, but even 5,000 people would be a major challenge for the businesses, for emergency services, police. Can you describe the challenges that you have faced in anticipating a big crowd?
Well, when we first started this, I immediately called Sheriff Kerry Lee and said, Sheriff, this thing's getting bigger and bigger, and it's going to get bigger and bigger. And no matter if we do nothing at all, people are still going to show up. So if we know people are still going to show up, why don't we take the bull by the horns and start discussing the number one issue, which is safety, which is you're in rural Nevada. Because, people get great ideas, and it's a great day trip, and they come out, and, and some people think they're going to storm Area 51 at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, when I talk to those people, I try to explain to them, if you're on the desert floor at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to have to worry about the sheriff getting you or the military getting you. You're going to have to worry about getting bit by a rattlesnake. That's why we have continually talk about safety every other word. So we decided to put this experience together. The Storm Area 51 Base Camp, which is what we're doing, is going to be an experience. It's a 2-day event that's going to take place at the Alien Research Center, starting on Friday, September 20th, and Saturday the 21st. The Base Camp experience will feature an exclusive screening and appearance by the cast of the Netflix hit Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers. We're also going to include appearances by expert speakers. We're going to have live music, film screenings, food trucks, art installations, costume contests, photo opportunities, and many more. And so, George, that's how this grew out. And it grew out of necessity because no matter what, you're going to have a large amount of people coming out to rural Nevada. And we just want to make the experience, one, something that's going to be exciting for them, and two, something that will be safe.
There was another event for Nye County that was called Peace Stock, which was going to be a music festival, and the county commissioners turned that down. And then in Lincoln County, there were 2 events under discussion that needed permits, an event in Rachel, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and then your event. And the commissioners, at least provisionally, have said yes, but they had doubts, right? I mean, just in terms of law enforcement coverage, emergency services, you got challenges with cell phone service, roads.
There's a lot of I'll go over the logistics with you for a bit because it's massive. I'm lucky enough that I'm a business guy, and I understand the way to success is to have a great team behind you. So when this all came up, I went and I called a good friend of mine, Emily Wooford, who has got years and years experience in doing these type events. And then the other person is Keith Wright, which he's the guy you want because he did Britney Spears in the desert with no services, nothing, no gasoline, he had to go out there and build everything out. So that's my team. That's the core team with a bunch of other great people that they have. So they took this mission on, and, we believe we're going to be very successful. Look, my event or our event, because I want you're part of it and Jeremy's part of it, everybody's going to be up there, is going to be for believers and then the uninitiated people to come out and learn more about this growing movement and to call for greater transparency around what many believe has been decades of government secrecy surrounding UFO technology.
The challenges that were of concern to the Lincoln County commissioners who decided to give you a permit to go forward with this were obvious. There are no gas stations out there. There's no hotel rooms. There's 10 hotel rooms in Rachel. They're booked. There's maybe 100 in the whole county. And, people that come out there have to be ready to take care of themselves. I mean, you're going to provide some services, porta potties, food, water. But other than that, I mean, people are kind of on their own.
We tell people, look, our event, the tickets are going to be $51 per day. That's going to help pay for all the infrastructure. Okay? Why $51? Because Area 51. We're going to have campsites for tents, and we're going to have RV spaces. The BASECAMP pass includes parking, 2 bottles of water, a $10 food truck voucher, and a commemorative lanyard. We're paying for the infrastructure cost. George, there's not going to be cell service. When 300 people show up, cell service is going to collapse. So now I have to rent a satellite because there's no infrastructure for this.
Can you say what you spent already to get this thing going?
I think we're a little over $45,000, and right now we're self-funding. We do have people that want to be sponsors. We want everybody to understand that we think that this festival can go on every year, and it would be a good thing for people to come and talk about ufology and talk about paranormal activities or remote, whatever they want to discuss. We want to provide an atmosphere where someone can physically come out and go, hey, look at this. I mean, the government's got the most top secret base on the planet is in the state of Nevada. And no one ever talks about this, George, but who were the people that announced that Area 51 really existed? The Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. They announced it in the New York Times a couple of years ago. So that even makes all these questions, bigger and bigger.
I'm with you on that. I'm not opposed to, I wouldn't be opposed to just something just for a party out there, if you can pull it off. And if it also is a learning experience, that's pretty cool too. It's kind of like the Roswell Festival in a sense, if it could grow into something like that. And the state of Nevada has sort of embraced this. When it created the ET Highway, it was meant to do it to increase tourism out there, to take advantage of the lore and legends of Area 51. So this certainly fits with that.
This has turned into a cultural movement. And what we're trying to do is provide the area and the time and the space for these folks to have fun. We're going to have music. We're going to have bands. We're going to have all that. But I wanted to make it to have really great speakers. Jeremy's coming out. He's going to do his film. He's getting me speakers that really, people can come out and discuss stuff and ask questions and make decisions on their own.
Well, let's bring Jeremy on and talk about the bigger picture of how to make a positive impact. Jeremy Corbell is an investigative filmmaker, an artist and martial artist, and a friend of mine. I should point out I've been featured in 2 of his films. I'm listed in the credits. They're his films, not mine, but he did interview me for them. And Jeremy, good to have you back on the show.
Hey, George and George, how you doing? This is amazing. It's a cultural movement. It's like the Twilight Zone and Westworld and Clockwork Orange.
So give us the 50,000-foot view of how to make this into something more than a party. If it's just a party and a celebration and people get together and are safe, that's good by itself. But you're hoping that it's something more, and you've been talking to George about how to do that.
It is something more. It's important to point out the power of a meme. A meme is a new thing. It's not born out of thin air. It can only thrive when there's some deep undercurrent and culture surrounding a timely thought. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The Storm Area 51 has become a powerful cultural movement. There is no denying that, whether you like it or not. And it's born out of frustration. And it's an important point that it's mobilizing people of all ages. It's being driven by a digitally savvy youth in America and around the world. This is unprecedented. You are now seeing something occurring that couldn't happen 30 years ago when Bob Lazar came out with his story, because we're living in a different digital world. So 30,000-foot view, you're seeing the will and the desire of the youth and the people on this planet to shine a light on UFO secrecy to reveal UFO transparency. This is a true cultural and social movement.
It's cool to have, Matty, when he started this, you were talking to him right off the bat before the world knew who he was. And I remember you called me and had discussed it. And the initial concern was how to get this under control, make sure people don't try to storm Area 51, because I think, Jeremy, you and George would both agree that is a really bad idea. Yeah.
It started off as a joke. I mean, just to be very specific, I mean, you heard, the kid talk about it. He's watching a Joe Rogan clip, and he sees Bob, and he sees me on Joe Rogan, the powerful Joe Rogan. I underestimated that. Around the world, the bell tolled, and this kid was then, inspired to put a Facebook event up. And again, that's a moot point if people aren't fascinated by this. Show me them aliens. People are fascinated. And all of this was inspired, because of just the simple retelling of the Bob Lazar story in a Netflix documentary. I mean, it's absolutely surreal, and it has caught fire, and it's very real in the fact that people are coming. So I think someone like George Harris is doing the right thing in a community that wants it by providing safety, by providing security. We all know the threats. We all know what can go wrong. But seeing what he's doing, that's why I'm advocating. I'm not organizing anything, but I'm advocating for safety and sanity. And look, man, this could be a national holiday. This could be a time every year where people gather to communicate and show their desire. It's a really unprecedented time in human history, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to be part of a true cultural movement.
Let me ask you this, George. Are you concerned that something gets out of hand and that law enforcement just shuts it down? I mean, you're talking to the sheriff almost daily. You know what the concerns are, not only the sheriff, but the military. And I just wonder what you're hearing back from them.
Well, the sheriff and all the Nye County sheriffs and the highway patrol and believe it or not, law enforcement agencies from other counties, they're meeting. They have their emergency response team. One of the requirements is that I have 10 armed security staff that has experience. A lot of my guys are cops, retired military. They know what they're doing. So, when you come to our place, you're going to come up, you're going to park, you're going to walk up, you're going to go through, you're going to be wanded, and then you're going to be given your lanyard and your thing, and you're going to walk in, and you're going to have an enjoyable experience, and the entire family is invited. And then after we screen the movie, we're going to have a couple of big telescopes. They'll go on the screen, and you'll be able to see probably the best star viewing. This little area where we're at in Area 51 is considered one of the top 10 places to look at the stars. So we want to make this an experience for everyone and a place for everyone to get together and talk.
And to give people things to do without them storming the base.
You will be able to storm Area 51 because we are going to duplicate the back gate of Area 51 on the alien research property. You'll be able to run through the gate. You'll be able to take all the pictures you want.
And camo dudes?
We're going to have camo dudes. We're going to have
right.
The white truck up there. And we're doing this because it's not going to be a smart idea to try to go up and storm the base. First of all, you won't get on the base.
I appreciate you coming on. Good luck with your event. I think it's probably safe to say that there will be quite a bit of news coverage, including KLAS TV. So thanks for joining us. And Jeremy Corbell with more of our conversation about the big picture look at what this movement might become. I'm not sure we can call what's happening right now a revolution, not just yet anyway, but something is happening. You can feel it. I mean, the ball is in play. It feels like a movement is underway, and it's been that way. So I don't know, 19 months or so since that New York Times story, December 2017, talking about the secret Pentagon UFO program. And since then, we've seen the U.S. Navy announce that it's changing its guidelines to make it easier for its pilots to report encounters with unknown objects. Doesn't mean We're talking about alien spacecraft, just unknowns, unidentifieds. Since then, we've had all kinds of TV coverage, news coverage, television programs, documentaries, and films, and hearings for congressional members, closed-door briefings by pilots who've seen these things. I mean, a lot of stuff is in play. And now we see this event, this movement about Area 51 with George Harris, who has talked about his Area 51 Storm Base Camp event. And as there's another event planned for the town of Rachel, also in Lincoln County. And you have to wonder, is there a way to funnel all of this energy to make sure that the momentum continues? Jeremy Corbell, let's talk big picture stuff. You and I have had this conversation in private, and we've discussed it in public as well. You're dealing with UFOs, ufology, ufologists, that whole world, and it's like herding cats, except it's harder. You know, for 70 years, ufologists, people who follow this topic, have been griping and complaining and demanding this and demanding that. You know, the secret government's been studying this stuff. Admit it. You know, you've been hiding evidence for all these years. You've been studying UFOs. You want to know about the technology. You're trying to figure this stuff out. You've probably got videos and films that you're not sharing with us. We demand to know what's going on and on and on. And then the government finally, December 2017, there's a little crack in the dam and information starts seeping out. And the government, in a way, admits, yeah, you're right. We have been lying. We have been studying this stuff in secret. Here's a little bit of what we've been doing. And ufologists react as if you just shot their grandmother. And it's hilarious in a sense and tragic in another. So, you know, there's a lot to be frustrated about. So is that part of what's going on here?
Yeah, I'd say that's a big part of what's going on here, but also we're dealing with a completely different reality now. We're having people born into reality, you know, where we're asking the same question, are we alone in the universe? This has remained one of the greatest questions ever asked by humanity once humans began looking up at the cosmos. But we're asking it now in a world, a different world than the philosophers of past. These are scientists and I'd say even mystics now are looking at it differently because we know more. We have learned more. If you don't get that message, if you don't understand that you're living in a new age, in a new world, you have not been paying attention. Simple as that. Yeah, it's an exciting time, George. I mean, I think there's a new era. I think there's new people that are coming into this fascination from a different vantage than any of us before. And I think that's what we're seeing. That's the explosion we're seeing.
Yeah, so it's a delicate time. You hope that these young people, or at least, and not all of them are young people, there's a lot of people who haven't really paid attention to the topic, who are now drawn to it and are taking a look at it. And you got to hope that the experience will be positive, that they'll stick with it, that they'll dig deep, because it's not something you can learn overnight. It is challenging to separate wheat from chaff. So it's hopeful that this Area 51 storm event, whatever you want to call it, can be a positive experience. But that is challenging to channel it into positive ways, right?
Yeah, that was the first thing that crossed my mind. It was like there was so much press about Lazar, which was wild because, you know, let's just take it back to that. This is so simple. Bob Lazar simply told his story again 30 years later. And yes, after 30 years, you know, we were able to go back and look at the things that Lazar had said, and were able to, you know, prove things that weren't available 30 years ago just through the lens of time. But more importantly, and more obviously, he's telling you the same story. But now we're living in a different age, so information spreads completely differently. Fact-checking, completely different. So now we're looking at a time where we have this potential energy, and all these people are coming in it at anew, and we should harness this. We should take this potential energy and educate and direct. And yeah, that was my first thought, man. I was really concerned that people would miss the point, but guess what? It's not happening. People are getting it, and it's through media and social media that people are starting to ask the right questions. I'm very optimistic.
It was scary there in the beginning how quickly this thing spread, to your point, how quickly it spread all around the world. And suddenly you have millions of people saying, yeah, we're coming. And obviously millions of people are not coming, but millions of people were expressing their interest in the subject. And hopefully a lot of them will stick with it. But even if it's a few thousand, I mean, that itself, that it show up out there in the desert, you'd want to be able to give them something to do to make it a lasting impression. I mean, a party is fine just for its own sake, but this is an opportunity that hopefully somebody can take advantage of.
Yeah, you can have a party anywhere, anytime, but just look at it this way. I heard somebody on the news, I think it was one of the council people, he's saying if 0.1% of those who have publicly expressed the opinion that they're interested in coming to this out of 3 million people, that's 3,000 people, and that doubles the population. I mean, it's wild. So, yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls, and we should talk about that. This is the desert. Everything in the desert has teeth. There's even more going on that people should be aware of. But essentially, if everybody comes with the right intent of learning and becoming educated and having a good time in a responsible way, this is a moment. Everybody wins. This is a moment that everybody wins in the local community, the public relations, to the military base, to UFO secrecy, to everybody. We all win if this goes down well. And for it to go down well, it just needs to be organized. And I do want to say something. I know it might be a little controversial, but look, it was interesting to me. I'm just going to be straight up with you. It was interesting to me that 2 permits were put out, and then there was this turnaround, and it was, however, this is a state of emergency. So clearly, on one side, everybody wants this, but on the other side, everybody's terrified. I will say I was really sitting back to see who I should advocate for, where I should advocate for, because I don't know who's going to have a safe environment. I'm not organizing it. I'm trying to guide, speakers and people and this sort of thing. Well, one of the 2 permits was conditional. The other one wasn't. So the gentleman you just had on, George Harris, it was non-conditional. He proved he had security. He proved he had medical. He proved everything he needed. The one in Rachel, yeah, I'm worried about. It's a conditional permit. It's not authorized yet.
I know the first time I interviewed George Harris about his plans, he had said, that he was actually hoping for all the events, that there'd be multiple events, sort of like a big motorcycle event that happens every year, Sturgis, that there is multiple independent events that would all be mutually supportive in a sense. And I think that he is hoping that the event in Rachel, centered around the little alien, is a success as well. I don't know that they are as far along as he is in the planning, but I've known those people a long time, and I sure hope that they are moving forward with their own plans. At this point, nobody knows how many people are going to show up, and that was what the Lincoln County commissioners that you referred to were worried about. And yes, they did issue an emergency declaration. The county commission, Lincoln County, voted on an emergency declaration, and what that means is basically they're asking for help from the state of Nevada, and they're going to get it. The state of Nevada has officials that were assigned to help coordinate this thing, to bring emergency personnel in. Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo has said he's going to send officers. So a lot of different government entities are going to have people on the ground there to make sure that everything goes smoothly. But again, nobody knows exactly how many people are going to show up or what's going to happen.
Yeah, and George Harris has it right from the beginning. We all hope that everything goes over smoothly, but I really couldn't get behind it to even say I was going to show up or show my film until I knew. But what really told me this can happen and it can have a powerful social impact is that the local law enforcement and other agencies are establishing a command center on the hill up by what George is calling BASECAMP. And I thought that was such a perfect term. When you're climbing Mount Everest, in order to acclimate to the environment, you go to BASECAMP. And from there, you can continue venturing out. So I am comfortable telling people, by the way that it's going, go to BASECAMP. Use that as your location, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if the other permit is going to be, finalized, and we don't know if everybody's going to be safe. So I know that on one tank of gas, you can get a hotel in Las Vegas, and you can drive out to BASECAMP, and you can see the speakers who I am definitely curating. I'm curating those speakers, and I'm trying to.
What does that mean? What do you mean you're curating speakers?
Basically, the facility. So George asked me, he said, "Hey, do you have people that people really want to hear from?" He's into this stuff. He wants people to become educated. Absolutely. I'll provide my film. You can screen my film exclusively. I will pull in people that I know that have a strong voice. Maybe not the voices you've heard from, but the voices you should hear from, as well as some you'll recognize. And everybody's going to provide moments of information. It will be fun. It will be an exciting environment. But everybody there will learn the history of what's been going on and what the potential is for us now, which is brand new. As we know, there are closed-door congressional briefings, and I want those open. There will be some things that are actionable that we can do, but mainly provide a safe environment. If the locals are doing that, and they can all pull it off, and we can go to BASECAMP and kind of start there, then this is going to be a real opportunity, a springboard for UFO transparency. I believe that with all of my heart. In fact, I know that.
Can you share any of the names of the speakers, or is it too early to do that?
Actually, I have a lot of speakers that would like to talk at this, but I actually have chosen a few people just to put out, today. So obviously it's cast members as well. Again, if you come back to the root of this is Bob Lazar. So my film on Netflix, it's like it got a lot of people talking. Joe Rogan, the powerful Joe Rogan amplified that. There's a bunch of new celebrities talking about it, which always drives traffic and information. But I do have some speakers. I know, for example, Ken Lane of Desert Oracle magazine and Desert Oracle podcast. He will be the MC for the entire night. They call him the voice of the desert. This guy's amazing. And then I don't know if you know of Jane Kyle, UFO Jane out of Texas. She is a speaker that I think has a very powerful, powerful voice. And I haven't heard enough from her. So she's speaking, and I'm excited about that. And then we have Alejandro Rojas, because he puts on events, but a lot of times he doesn't get to talk. And I think he has a good global view of what's going on. And there are other speakers that I think everybody's going to be very excited about. But I need to make sure the environment is what it appears before I announce those. But people will be very interested to hear these people talk. People you might not expect or you hope for.
We've talked about, I referred to herding cats with ufologists. You get people, it comes in waves. People are interested in the topic. There's folks who try to lobby Congress. There are people who go on social media, rant and rave and post stuff every day. It's kind of as a look at me sort of a thing, but then they don't follow through. I'm wondering how to get people to stick with it, and I don't know the answer to that.
There are some things cooking, and I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm sure it's very interesting. I think there's a way to do things now with the media and the attention that, really started for me, since I released my film, The Bob Lazar Area 51 and Flying Saucers. That was a turning point in my life. My life has completely changed. I don't have time to go on Twitter and argue with the same 25 people anymore. It's just the conversation has moved beyond that. We are now pop culture. We are now mass media. This topic is so powerful and potent that it's time for us to stop bickering amongst ourselves and see the bigger picture. And if you cannot do that, then you're going to miss out.
So you will be there at the BASECAMP thing. Do you have any idea if they're able to live stream it? Will people around the world be able to watch it?
That is one of the things that I suggested from the very beginning, and I believe that there are attempts to create that situation. There's a lot of people that want to help right now, and I think very wisely, the one thing that George Harris and his events person, Emily, what they've done is they didn't jump right in front of everything. They didn't put the cart before the horse. They're putting safety and security first, so everybody has a good time. However, now that they are ahead of the game with that, which we can see with the permit itself, now there are these big opportunities to engage the greater public, whether they can come or not to the event, to what's going on, because this is a human interest. This is an interest that transcends a UFO community. This is popular culture. This is mass media. This is now.
Here's what I worry about. Well, a couple of things I worry about. One is that somebody or some group of somebodies decide that they're smarter than the government. They're going to slip into the base, become internet celebrities by doing so, or slip over the line, maybe even get themselves arrested, and then something goes horribly wrong. Or that a lot of people try to do something like that. It's just, I can't emphasize enough how bad of an idea that is in light of the security situation around the base. But, you know, that area out there is beautiful, especially at night, looking at the stars. Hopefully nobody will be quite that stupid and that there aren't any accidents because it's a long way from a hospital. But there are a lot of challenges and a lot of things that could go wrong. But you got to kind of cross your fingers because if it goes right, it could become not only an annual event, but could affect the big picture on this issue.
Absolutely at a tipping point, and I'm going to hit the nail on the head, although it's very uncomfortable for people. Yes, the fear of everybody is that there will be extremist groups, there will be some sort of maniac, and you know what I'm talking about, living in Las Vegas. That is absolutely a valid fear. However, I will say that the base has a very strategic plan. Nobody is getting even close to that base. There is not a possibility in heaven or earth. It's not happening. So because of these things that are in place, our job as citizens is to harness the potential energy, drive people through education, arts, cinema, music, and really talking and getting people heard who need to be heard. And we are going to have a good experience. No one is going to take that from us. And there is so much security. Remember, Area 51, the world's best-known secret base, it has security, as you have uncovered in your reports, well beyond what people can imagine. So we need to let go of that idea that is not beneficial to anybody and bring it back around to harnessing the potential energy of everybody interested to shine a light on UFO secrecy and create UFO transparency. Really simple.
Do you get a sense of where things are in D.C.? We've had these discussions privately and publicly, including conversations with some of the witnesses who've appeared before the U.S. Senate in closed-door briefings, pilots who've told their stories to the senators. A lot of speculation among the naysayers that they're just talking about drones. It's classified projects. It's ours. It's nothing unknown. Do you have any indication that that is inaccurate, that they are having conversations about unknowns and whether or not there's action underway behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's incredibly laughable, and I kind of come back to what Joe Rogan said on his podcast, because he did say some things in the past that were very inaccurate. He had people giving, kind of bad data to him about, for example, the Tic Tac UFO case. I mean, wow, wouldn't it be great to see Fravor on that platform, Commander Fravor? So again, you know my history with Commander Fravor. We talked for many years prior. I kept his secret about the Tic Tac UFO case. You and I actually broke that story twice on Coast to Coast before the New York Times. So yes, I'm intimately involved with that case, and it's public knowledge now. Commander Fravor said it. So we do know that Commander Fravor did brief Congress in closed-door briefings, that he brought other people. That is public information now. So there is an interest. There is a unique moment. You released a document, if I recall correctly, that showed that OSAP was trying to get special access permission, that it was trying to get access to other UFO programs. This is a moment when Congress is listening. We don't need the people that already know. We need the people on the tipping point. We need the people who are on the fence. And so there are things in works right now that I think can greatly influence the closed-door congressional briefings. The public wants to know.
You're talking about Area 51. Of course, the public wants to know about that. There are legitimate national security secrets out there, legitimate programs that should rightfully remain out of sight, out of the sight of our adversaries. But this is something different.
I think there's a shell game that's been played for a long time, and I do believe that the one critical thing is our material science. We do understand how gravity-propelled craft work. We understand the physics, We understand exactly how it works. The limiting factor is our material science, our ability to replicate the materials, not even to mention the fuel source, on how these things actually physically, mechanically operate. And even with nanotechnology as it is right now, we are eons away. But I'm a hopeful person in humanity.
You know, when you talk about the technology, we don't have to reveal the technology. You could talk about the fact that if it was out there, acknowledge it.
Right. You know, look, the highest-ranking military individual that I've ever spoken with in my entire life, he made a point of saying to me one time, the government works for you. 99.9% of this stuff, it's not truly national security. You should know. It is your human right to know, to have questions answered. If, like Bob Lazar emphasized in my film, that we have been contacted by another technologically advanced civilization in our universe, and they appear to be visiting Earth. Now that is a reality whose time has come. I think the secrecy, personally, it's not what people think. The secrecy, and I agree with Bob, he said it in my film as well. He emphasized this in my film, that the same technology that could instantaneously alter the path of humanity the very next day, that it could be weaponized. And this is the reason for the secrecy. And I understand that. That's a double-edged sword. However, the basics, the base understanding, nobody should own that. If it is known that we are not alone in the universe, that needs to be told.
I had got a message from Bob. You know, I don't talk to him every day. I am in communication with him every week or so. You were in communication with him a lot more than that, but he had toyed with the idea of calling in tonight. And that's what are things been like for him since the film came out, and also since the Joe Rogan interview? Because the Rogan interview reached a whole different audience, and I know my emails and phone calls blew up all over again. Some of the same kinds of questions and controversies that have been addressed many times over the last 30 years come November. What's it been like for him in the last couple of months?
You know, it's funny, we talk about that. When we were walking out from where Joe podcasts, he turned to me and he said, "You better shave your beard." I thought he was like joking, right? It has transmuted this entire experience for Bob, for me. The world is now talking about this in a completely different way. Joe allowed Bob to tell you what happened to him. And that was so powerful. It was so profound, more than people understand. And so with Bob's everyday life, you know, he's kind of isolated. He works in his lab and in his shop, and he doesn't really engage the outside world that much. But those brief encounters, when he does, he understands now. He understands that phone meeting, you actually took a photo of that and put it on Twitter, a phone meeting where Joe Rogan called, and I was kind of trying to convince Bob to make a decision. You know, does he want to put his face out there in that kind of way? That photo was prophetic. Joe was telling us we have an opportunity to alter the way people have this conversation on a pop culture level. And he was right. So I think Bob has been vindicated in a lot of ways, more than he ever anticipated, because he said from the very beginning to you, he said, "I cannot prove this story in full, but what happened to me is exactly like I'm saying." So I think his life has changed in a lot of ways. I could see that there's a joy in him that people have at least heard what he has to say, take it for whatever value you think it should be valued. But look, again, we're living in a different world. You've got Commander Fravor. He saw a UFO flying for 5 minutes. He chased a UFO for the United States military. It absolutely nullified any attack that he could possibly make.
No, wait, this is just a classified drone, right? It's ours.
I mean, we're joking, and that's kind of a funny thing to say, but, you know, it is so utterly ridiculous. I was just talking, so there's a comic, his name is Dave Foley. You probably know him from Kids in the Hall. Sure. Really intelligent dude. And, you know, he kind of was talking to me recently, and he says, you know, look, when they talk about Occam's razor, he said it's not the most mundane answer that's correct. It's the most simple. It's the most obvious. It's the most clear. It's the one that's right in front of you. And I thought that was so smart, and that echoed what Joe Rogan said on his podcast, which is he finds that debunkers or these, quote-unquote skeptics, that they're fundamentally lazy. They're constantly just trying to belittle anything complex, more complex than a spoon, than a Tic Tac. So, yeah, to hit on your joke there, this was absolutely an anomalous aerial vehicle of advanced technology unlike humanity has ever made or can make in foreseeable future. All governments know about it. All are fighting to master this technology because whoever can reverse engineer this gravity propulsion system, they win. Period. Full stop. They win. So the Tic Tac UFO was absolutely an unidentified, an AAV, an anomalous aerial gravity-propelled vehicle, and hopefully you hear Commander Fravor tell you about his first-hand encounter with why it couldn't have been a glitch on the radar.
Well, that'd be a tall order to get him to come out. I won't even ask you about that. Let me mention about Rogan. So Rogan is an interesting character on multiple levels. It would be fun to have him on the other side of this microphone, sitting in the chair where you're sitting, to ask him some questions. I don't have the time to listen to podcasts. His is one of the few that I ever tune into when he's specifically when he's talking about UFOs, and I've seen him take both sides. I mean, he's been really harsh when he thinks somebody is BSing him, but it seems like he's been transformed by his interest in the Area 51 S4 Bob Lazar stuff.
Joe Rogan is a brutally honest individual. That has been my experience. I think that he is absolutely open, and I think that he did something kind of heroic in allowing Bob to tell his account of what happened to him, but really I equate it to there's not many people that really wanted to know if Bob was telling the truth. They wanted to jump into judgment, where Joe Rogan got to meet him. Bob went to one of his comedy shows. He got, Joe and Bob got to kind of get to know each other a little bit, and Bob had the opportunity to state his case. And Joe gave him that because Joe really wanted, and I think he still wants to know the truth about that. I think it's important to him. Yeah, I would love if the tables were reversed. I would like to know what Joe thinks. I would like to have that conversation in that way. Absolutely. He's a brilliant-minded. He's straightforward and brutally honest. Absolutely. So one day I hope to hear that, but I think he speaks volumes in many ways, and I think you'll hear more from Joe about this. And yes, I do think the script was flipped. He said to me that my movie, changed his mind about it, and that's very flattering, and that's great. It wasn't me though. I mean, my movie hopefully was entertaining, but that was Bob. That was Bob's account that did that. But at least Joe was open enough to watch and to listen, and I did see a change because there was a time when he just didn't want to hear any more cuckoo because he was enough with all the people that were cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It was a data poor perspective. He was getting people who were, I don't even want to say fringe, they were full of BS. So thankfully he's had some people now that are coming on to give him some basic information that he can rely on. He can take it to the bank. He's a loud voice. I hope he's an ally to get to the truth, whatever that truth may be.
Well, his reach is incredible. I mean, I knew it was big, but I had no idea. And you referenced that photo. I took that when we were at Lazar's house in Michigan some months ago, and having a cell phone conversation with Rogan on the other end, three of us on one end, him on the other, and listening to his pitch about Bob doing the show. And, after we finished, we went back, and I would just share private thoughts there that went back and forth about what Joe Rogan's ultimate intent was, and it turns out it was exactly what he said it was. It's he was curious. He wanted to hear the story and share it with his listeners, and that's what he did.
Yeah, Joe Rogan is a man of his word. I do believe that, as I like to say, his curiosity has been weaponized once again, meaning that he wants to actively participate in getting closer to the truth on this subject because it is absolutely compelling right now. We know more today than we did before, and he's right. Skeptics are lazy. There's one way to look at something and try to come to the truth, and there's another way to try to, always try to fit a square block into a round hole. And I think that Joe has spoken, and I think that he will continue to seek the truth, And I am grateful for that. We need allies in this. We need people who really want to know, not people that just really want to confine the truth to whatever their whim is. And I think that we have an opportunity in conversation now that we didn't before. So I am eternally grateful that he allowed Bob to talk. And I really hope that Joe gets more credible, powerful witnesses and people to talk with, because I think the public needs to hear it.
Well, the result of his broadcast, I mean, his podcast, is that we're here tonight talking about Storm Area 51 and its various incarnations and what could be a fairly large gathering or two. We're not quite sure which, if there's, well, there are good plans for more than one, two different ones on the same dates, and then some big parties in Las Vegas.
Here's the deal. I'm not organizing. I'm advocating. I share the same fears, but also the same hopes. It is important to know that we are not stopping this. September 20th is happening. There's a storm brewing. We have to deal with that fact. So I like what locals are doing, such as George Harris with BASECAMP, creating a safe environment. Now, you should also know I'm creating a call to action, so pay attention. There will be a document. It will be a weapon that, if placed in the right hands of our representatives, it will help enact true and lasting change. Pay attention to my social media. There will be a call to action. It will help us. And then finally, watch Twitter. There will be a campaign to harness the potential energy of those who cannot physically be there and contribute. So two things. There will be a call to action. You'll be able to sign. You'll be able to help. And second, there will be a Twitter campaign to involve everybody that can't be there. Look, exciting times. This is amazing. We're going to allow this to go the right direction. Safety first. And let's have a good time.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. I'll probably see you out there. I imagine I'm going to be assigned to cover this event.